Project the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which President Donald Trump signed into law last week, will have extensive impacts on access to health care and food assistance for people in West Virginia. According to the Kaiser Family Foundation and the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy, new requirements created by the legislation will result in between 50,000 and 110,000 West Virginians losing Medicaid by 2034. West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy Director Kelly Allen says cuts to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, also threaten the food assistance of tens of thousands of West Virginians. Allen says the state will have to face tough decisions about how to respond to this loss of federal funding.
State lawmakers are going to have to raise taxes, raise revenue, cut Medicaid and SNAP, or cut other things that the state budget normally pays for. So it really just puts a lot more pressure on state lawmakers.
Overall, Allen says West Virginia is projected to lose about $6 billion in federal health care dollars by 2034 and $80 million annually in funding for SNAP. Ohio Governor Mike